Well, welcome back. My name is Mark Rogers, and you are listening to Keep It Real with Greg Zastrow. As always, Greg Zastrow is in the house with another real conversation about a tough subject that everybody needs to have. And you know the power of this. But we are also in correlation with that in Life Insurance Awareness Month, which always brings up an opportunity to have a conversation that nobody wants to have.
Right.
And the biggest thing is illness that we see. And you've got some pretty interesting stats that, as you and I have done educational events all across the country,
Right.
we've been to many states together. We've shared the stage at lots of educational events. One of the things that I always take away from you is that information around illness, because although we're living longer, the challenge is living longer.
Yeah, and we're not living healthier, right? Which I know is hard to believe, but through the wonder of modern medicine, right, we've extended life expectancy. On average, we're going to live about 8 years longer than our folks, right? But those last 8 years are not going to be as healthy as mom and dad's last 8 years. Meaning, we're going to suffer from multiple chronic conditions in many cases, and it's estimated that 35% of all people 65 and older will suffer from up to 6 chronic conditions at the same time. That's significant, right? Chronic meaning, diabetes, hypertension, right? Cholesterol, whatever, that may be. That, when you think of it just in those terms, if we're going to live 8 years longer, right? But we're not going to live 8 years healthier. Imagine the burden, the financial burden on people's retirement, right? Imagine the greater burden, as a society, right? On how we're going to provide, that care. Medicare, Medicaid in particular, right? Which is designed to help folks that from basically becoming impoverished, right? Losing their home or their last savings, to an illness. Those are not, those entitlement programs are not built, at least today, right, to handle what's coming. Right, those aren't funded properly, to what our statistics are telling us they need to be at. So it's something that I think people need to talk about. It's certainly part of, the process of retirement planning and certainly estate planning.
So, Greg, Life Insurance Awareness Month, I think, needs to have a conversation about just the advancements. And you're talking about sickness. You're talking about what I'm hearing is cha-ching, 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 right? Those expenses and what it's going to cost somebody.
Right.
So how does life insurance come into play when we're talking about some of these living benefits that you talk about?
Let's just talk about life insurance and what it means, right? When we hear the word life insurance, it does not provide a warm and fuzzy, euphoric feeling. Can we agree to that?
100%.
What life insurance, what people immediately, relate to is dying. One of the best kept secrets in our industry is that, most companies now allow a death benefit or a portion of the death benefit to be used as a living benefit, right? Whether it's chronic illness, whether it's critical illness. We've seen that demographic shift. And, long-term care was a pretty big, product, as last decade, right? Starting in the 90s, in the early 2000s, we personally as a firm sold a lot of long-term care policies. Those have gone by the by, right? Companies
It's
are not
almost
offering.
a thing of the past,
It
right?
is. It really is. I think the most effective way to deal with that uncertainty is looking to see how one's existing life insurance or a life insurance program can assist in creating a little bit more certainty. And if you think about it, in addition to some of the tax benefits that life insurance can bring, you have now a product that you can use guaranteed. So we know life insurance is going to have a payoff. We know that. But to the policy holder, that doesn't always mean as much. But if you can use that or a portion of that, right, to take care of you while you're alive, to preserve and protect a spouse, a loved one, or your assets from being depleted, that has a new meaning. Most people don't understand that those options exist.
So there's lots of different types of life insurance that's out there. There's term, whole life, index, universal life, variable life.
Yep.
For our listeners at home, what's the usage? Is there a reason to have one versus the other, or how do you help somebody, really educate themselves on what type of life insurance works for them?
Typically term insurance is for a need for a particular term, right?
Yep.
It's by far the most affordable, insurance, and its designed, or its primary function is for younger people, right? That's where the sweet spot is, where young families can acquire significant amounts of coverage for very little commitment. It can renew every year, where you see a little uptick in price because you're a little older, or it could be for a period certain, whether that's 10, 20, some people even have a 30-year term, policy. Less than 1% of term insurance ends in a claim, so people usually drop it or it expires, before they need it. But for many cases, that's fine because it's served the need for that term. Permanent insurance, whether it's whole life or a universal life chassis, is designed for a permanent solution, right? When we die, for example, there's a loss of income, right, to a survivor. That's guaranteed, whether it's a pension option, right, or just a loss of a Social Security check. So life insurance that's a permanent insurance, is designed for a permanent need. It is, the premiums are higher for permanent insurance than they are term. But again, they're designed to be there, when you need it. And again, the insurance industry did a study. They found that most people want their policy to be enforced when they die. So that's not a big surprise.
Yeah, that's a key.
Yeah, right. Regardless of what that looks like. And by the way, some companies offer living benefits on term policies as well.
Oh wow.
So there's a lot of neat things that life insurance policies can do for you while you're alive, not just for someone else when you're gone.
What are the biggest mistakes around life insurance that you've seen over 30 plus years of your career? What are some of the biggest mistakes that people make with their life insurance policies?
My initial reaction to that question is the notion that I don't need this any longer. I hear that so often. I don't need this any longer. Very few instances, as people get on in life, do they need life insurance. Life insurance, as you know, is motivated by one thing and one thing only. That's love. It's either the love of someone else, right? The love of, whether it's a spouse, whether it's your children, whether it's your employees. Love is the common denominator in that purchase, right? As you know, I lost my wife 6 years ago. Being in this business for 33 years, I purchased a fair amount of insurance over the years. Do I need to have all of that insurance anymore? No. But to get rid of it just because I don't think I need it, I think would be a little foolhardy. I still have 4 children. I have 6 grandchildren that I adore and love. And eventually I want to see the fruits of my wife and my labor, go to family in the most tax efficient way possible. Do I need life insurance? No. Will they appreciate it? Is it the most efficient way to transfer, a good portion of my wealth? Absolutely. So the biggest mistake, to answer your question, people forgetting, what it does and how it's beneficial. There's a lot of things we don't need. We don't need 2 cars, right? I like having a pickup truck and a car. Do I need both of them? No. But I like both of them. Life insurance is not a need for many Americans, especially as they get into retirement. But it's a very nice asset to hold when people understand the tax-free transfer, the tax-free withdrawal ability, and the fact that they can use that while they're alive to help pay their care if they get sick.
There's a really famous quote by Robert Kiyosaki. He said, it's not about how much money you make, but how much money you keep, right. How long you keep it for, right? And he's talking about that generations, right? How many generations can you keep it for? That generational wealth. When you're talking about beneficiaries, one of the things that I think of is some of those mistakes, those miscues, those beneficiary miscues. How do you help your current investors make sure that they're not making those type of beneficiary mistakes?
We talk about this in our firm quite a bit, because once you get word that a client has passed, you don't get a do-over,
right?
You don't get, there's no more time to update a form, right? Or to make a correction. Beneficiary designations are something people forget about, right? Ironically, it's the beneficiary that you bought the policy for in the first place. But, over time, things happen. Life happens. Death occurs, right? People move on. People get divorced. People lose loved ones. So one of the things that we are always talking about is making sure the beneficiary designations are exactly the way they want them to be, because we don't get to do that over, right? That doesn't typically involve the court system. That's between the insurance company and whoever's listed on that form. It's a private transaction. It's probate, free. So making the biggest mistake people make is not having them updated and not making sure, the failure to make sure that whatever's on that form accurately represents how you feel today.
So if you have these questions around life insurance. If you're wanting a second opinion, a review, perhaps. If you're wanting somebody to help you dive into making sure that your beneficiary designations are exactly how you want it, we actually have a guide. We have a beneficiary review journal that people can go through just to make sure that they're up to date. If you want access to that, click on the link below, set up a time to talk with Greg or myself, and we can really walk you through that process
It's
and
a nice
help you.
piece. Yeah, it's a very nice piece. And it takes what, Mark, 10 minutes to go through it?
It's painless.
Yeah, it really is
But it can
painless.
make such a difference
Absolutely.
into that legacy. Reach out to us. This has been Keeping It Real with Greg Zastrow. Greg, always great information, always just a good conversation and a good feeling. And we're so grateful for you sharing your knowledge with us. Until next time, stay tuned.
Thanks, buddy.